Morning Exercises, August 13th. And David said, Is there yet any that is left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? 2 Samuel 9:1. Let me not pass this without remark. See the low estate of Saul's house. He had a very numerous family, sufficient to have replenished a country, and yet it was now so reduced, dispersed, concealed, or unknown, that it was necessary to inquire whether any remains of it were left. So God setteth the solitary in families. Some houses, distinguished by their wealth and nobility, fall into indigence and obscurity, while others are completely terminated, their last branch having withered in the dust. Their inward thought is, that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Nevertheless, man, being in honor, abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. All is vanity. See a fine instance of the forgiveness of injuries. Saul had been David's sworn foe, and had pursued him to the last with remorseless malignity. Yet while he was alive, David never took an advantage to injure him when he had him completely in his power. And when he died, he mourned over him, and eulogized him far beyond his desert. And years after, he inquires whether any of his family was left, not to cut them off, lest they should disturb his government, or to punish the sins of the father upon the children. Thus Athaliel arose and destroyed all the seed royal. Thus Abimelech would leave none remaining of his father's house, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons upon one stone. And the same barbarous exterminations have been always practiced in the East. But David asks if any is left to show him kindness. Let us learn from hence not to avenge ourselves, but rather to give place unto wrath. A greater than David has said, Love your enemies, bless them that curse you. And he perfectly exemplified his own command. When reviled, he reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. We have here a proof of real and refined affection, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake. Jonathan had been his bosom friend, and his open and generous conduct had justly endeared him to David. Steadiness of attachment is to be admired. Thine own friend and thy father's friend forsake not. A friend is born for adversity, and loveth at all times, and his regard will extend beyond the individual to his connections and offspring. God himself acts upon this principle, and tells us that the children of his servant shall continue, and that the generation of the upright shall be blessed. I have been young, says David, and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. And shall not we act upon the same principle in another case? Who remembered us in our low estate? Who, when rich, for our sakes became poor? Who died that we might live? He was received up into glory, and is no more in the world. But are there none left of his family who stand in need of our assistance? Let us pity and relieve them. Whatever we do unto one of the least of these, he will esteem as done unto himself. It was honorable in David not to wait to be addressed, but endeavor to search out the object. We are to devise liberal things, and not only to seize, but to seek opportunities of doing good. The most needy and deserving are generally the least clamorous, and like the stricken deer, retire and bleed alone. Such we must seek after. We should not wait for the enforcement of claims, if conscience tells us they are due. Some, we fear, would never pay a debt, if they thought the creditor had forgotten it. But justice is the rule of our duty. We can go no farther in our praise of David. Surely his kindness loses somewhat of its excellence in its lateness. Mephibosheth was 5 years old when David ascended the throne, and was now married and had a son. Thus a considerable number of years must have elapsed since God had delivered David out of all his adversity. He therefore, though better late than never, should have made this inquiry much earlier. What shall we say to this? We ought to make the best of everything, especially in the conduct of great and good men. But none of them are faultless, and the sacred writers always show their impartiality. They always record things just as they occurred, regardless of consequences. Their only aim is truth. It has been said, in exculpation of David, that he was so much engaged in war, and pressed with such a multiplicity of engagements. There was a truth in this, but it does not entirely excuse him. He had entered into covenant with Jonathan, and should immediately have shown his seed the kindness of God, that is, the kindness which he had sworn in his presence to exercise. Let us take heed that indulgence does not harden the heart, and when we prosper, let us watch and pray lest we enter into temptation. The prosperity of fools destroys them, and the prosperity of wise men commonly injures them. As people rise in the world, they lose their recollection. The chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Lord, what is man? In all things Jesus has the preeminence. He remembered us as soon as he came into his kingdom, and though he passed into the heavens, he is still touched with the feeling of our infirmities.